It's those little things that keep me finding my way back to the Orange County line.
Welcome to the Y with Dr. T, and I'm here with Dr. John Keesler from the IU School of Social Work. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Brandy. I appreciate it.
So, let's talk about how do you connect to Orange County? Well, let me back up. Let's talk about what you do at IU and specifically the School of Social Work.
So what do I do? That's a good
I
question.
know it's a
That's
big
a
one
loaded
too.
question. So my primary responsibility is I'm an associate professor. I've been with the school. I'm in my 10th year, and there's sort of three legs to the stool as a faculty member: uh, research, teaching, and service. So that's in a nutshell what I do. And research can be anything that's either independent or collaborative with community organizations, funded, not funded. In teaching, certainly I have a teaching load that I'm responsible for, and then community service or service to the profession, service to the school or the university, all of that is part of that.
So, what's your area of interest or emphasis or
So that's interesting.
areas?
Yeah. When I first came down, I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, as you know. And my research area when I did my dissertation was really focused on disability service organizations. So I was focusing on staff that were providing direct care to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I was looking at organizational culture and climate, the impact of that on staff's well being, and I continue with that, and really it was around trauma-informed care. As we know, that's a system-wide approach. It really is about culture and climate, the environment that we create in the workspace. But then when I moved and I realized that living in a rural community presented tremendous opportunity, and I hope that we'll talk more about that, but really it presented an opportunity to get more involved, and there was a need. And in addition to the need, I realized that even though I came from a large city where you just sort of were part of the minutia, the way things were being done, you weren't really known. Here in smaller rural communities, you actually are somebody, and that's really important. It presents with you with an opportunity to get involved, to make a difference. And so I had the skill set, and there was opportunity to get involved. And so that sort of launched me into not only disability service organizations around trauma informed care, but rural communities as well.
Yeah, and I would also think, as we're talking about this, Indiana University has been pretty good about looking at how to get into communities with the CRE and multiple different things, and then adding a kind of a requirement or at least an opportunity for students to get into communities within the classroom. And I think that that's been a big push in the last probably 10 years that I think is really valuable. And on that, that is some of that's kind of how we met you for the first time. So my recollection is that uh, Ramona Osborne made the first contact,
Yes.
and at the conference, what is the conference? Center for Rural Engagement
Uh,
Conference, right?
the IU Rural Conference.
IU Rural
It's
Conference, which
housed
is
at
at French Lick.
French Lick. Yep.
Yeah. So we had started, as we've already talked on other episodes of the podcast. Southern Indiana Community Healthcare has started to look at adverse childhood experiences. Then they formed Thrive SICHC's Thrive Orange County Initiative, and Ramona had went to that training, and really, I'm gonna have you tell that story because I wasn't even there yet. But about you meeting Ramona.
Well, I suspect your memory is probably a bit clearer than mine. It's a little foggy at this point. Um, I'm not really quite sure. I remember Ramona coming up to me and talking to me, um, and she was a force to be reckoned with. And I think that that's why this is happening, why all of this is ongoing. Um, because she was a go-getter and she wanted to make a difference. And that is something that's stuck, even though Ramona has passed away. That is sort of her legacy that sticks and is woven throughout everything in Orange County, I think. But we had a conversation. I know that we met once on campus in the tutor room. We had lunch, and when Ramona wanted to do something, it got done.
Hmm.
You are very similar in that approach. When you want something done, it gets done, and folks just figure out a way of doing it. But there was one time where we had this meeting, and it was in the schools after the data had been collected around the adverse childhood experiences. And my thinking was, this is more than Orange County. This is bigger. Because historically, folks were looking at adverse childhood experiences from caregivers, from adults,
Hmm.
adults reflecting on their own childhood, or parents reporting for their kids,
Right.
and that's fine. But how much more empowering is it to hear from the kids themselves? And there's always this hesitancy about, well, can we ask people about this? Is it safe? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But the story here was bigger than that, and I was convinced of that, and I said, let's publish it.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what we did. And we got this out in an international journal around what was happening in Orange County.
Yeah.
Not just the adversity amongst children, but the fact that a community was coming together to do something. And that's something to be proud of. But what that project did was demonstrate the power of collaboration. And so the schools and folks from Orange County had the data, you had the relationships, but didn't necessarily see beyond Orange County. And here I come in as an academic and say, well, let's publish. Let's tell the story. And so I think, again, recognizing what we bring to the table i- and complement each other.
Yeah.
There was never any arguing, or you did it wrong, or you could have done it better. We know that things can always be improved. But when you're taking that first step and you're reaching out, it opens the door to new possibilities. And I think that's really a strong foundation for so much of what's happened here.
Yeah, and I agree because in order to collect that information, all three school systems had to work together. A health clinic had to anchor, right? Then we had to inform the community, parents included, and go through all the steps to kind of figure out well we knew, but we had to have the concrete data in order to be or in order to do really a lot about it. So it helps us kind of build that case. So your recollection is pretty close. Now I want to tell you mine. So Ramona was still chair of the of Thrive Orange County. And I remember when she met with you because she couldn't wait to tell me. And we were in fact trying to organize the last school to come on board.
Mhm.
Um, and she had came and said, I met with Dr. Keesler. He's a professor at IU and studies trauma-informed care. And, he's going to help us. And I'm like, perfect. Like, this is amazing. And I thought, well, he will because you're going to make sure of it. And it was then this really process of building upon our efforts collectively, anchored by a community health center right here, with that kind of that forward thinking of the clinic to really want to say, like, what's happening outside of these walls. And they were always doing that, but I think that years of these little bitty catalysts kind of coming together finally was the tipping point. Finally was, here we are. We can do some things. And so I think that having you along for that a, has been exactly what we needed. So that was roughly 19 into
Mhm.
20. The I think the article had been published or was in process of being published before we had that third school.
Yep.
Um, I think that's correct. So, okay.
But I think there's a few things worth noting there.
Yeah.
So, as a faculty member from IU, I came in to engage with the community.
Mhm.
I didn't come with a price tag. And there wasn't money to do what we did. And we did it simply because of passion
Yeah.
and sharing the story. And in some ways I think about, the old saying, it takes a village. And, you know, I don't know how I want to say this, but the fact is who is part of that village? And I'm an outsider. I'm an outsider to Indiana. I mean, I've lived here 10 years now, but you can feel it when you're an outsider. You know that you're not necessarily part of that community. But Orange County really opened its arms, and made me feel part of the community, made me feel welcome.
Well, I know we drag you into all kinds of stuff.
Well, that's a different story, or that's part of the story. But really, thinking about each one of us is part of building the community, building the foundation. We're the bricks, and we're paving our way as we're going. And it's about building together. It's not just about coming in and saying, we have a problem, here's the solution, bam, it's done. It just doesn't work like that. And we know that change is hard, change is slow.
Yeah.
And this whole journey around trauma informed care, adverse childhood experiences in Orange County, Southern Indiana, across the United States has never been easy. You have successes, you take a few steps back sometimes, but it's about perseverance. It's about showing up and doing the work and doing it together.
And that's the why. That's why these types of stories are so important because we do. We have to show up and do the work. And that means not just Orange Countyans, that means people who originally from Buffalo who are here as a tenured faculty member at IU coming in too and providing that help, that assistance, that guidance and support and helping us take what we have with very little resources and making it something
Mm-hmm.
big, something that is norms changing. And that's what Orange County does.
Well, and the other part of that is we know that there can be resistance between
Sure.
rural communities, outsiders, rural communities in IU, and faculty coming in and sort of faculty doing their thing. It's not been about me doing my thing. It's about how can I help the community move forward. Yes, there's secondary benefits for me, like a publication. That matters to the work that I do. It matters for my annual reviews. But really what it's about is how do we collaborate moving forward in creating solutions. And yeah, I don't know where else I was going to go with that, but
That's all right.
that's part of it.
But I do think that your involvement here has spread into also your involvement in Lawrence County and even in how you teach because you can teach something and then I think you can say, and here's a community that's doing what I'm trying to teach you.
Correct. And let's go back to that because now I remember what I was going to say. That so there can be some resistance to outsiders. But what has Orange County done is yes, there's still very much Orange County, there's still very much a rural community, but what they've said is come and see, come and help, be part of the story. And there hasn't been that sort of resistance because when you have that open doors sort of, it's welcoming. People want to be here, people want to help out, and it creates a relationship where there's mutual reciprocity, where people are giving and taking and sharing. So that's one thing I wanted to say is it's not just about resistance, perhaps, but also opening those doors,
Yeah.
making people feel welcome.
Yes. So there is one thing I want to talk about because I think that this hits home on we're trying to do here with especially with this podcast is so out of all that work and the relationship, we we helped to create a trauma informed care certification, an online one.
Mhm.
And at the time I thought that was amazing, but now it's even more precious because a section of that has Ramona talking.
Correct.
And that's living history, right? It'll live on forever. And I think that unfortunately not everybody gets does takes that certification, but that's a real history of the what we have in common and where we come from, and it is in Ramona's voice.
Yes.
That was pretty special.
Hmm. Yeah, and we lose so much over time. You know, we value our oral tradition, our storytelling, but if there's ways that we can capture it, whether it's through computer and technology or through publications, it's about sharing the story and remembering, because it's so easy to go back sometimes to where you were, and sometimes that's not good. You want to keep moving forward. You want to carry on the rich stories, the legacy of the community, but you're constantly wanting to improve. So, and that's one way we can do it, is capturing these stories.
Yeah. And that I just I think of how special that is and how unique to have that piece and it to also serve as a education piece and a certification piece. So
Correct.
that we are actually some of our local programs are using it to train staff as well. So and community members. So it's kind of full circle there. Going back though to, I think that the things that we have created here have also been beneficial for other communities.
Hmm.
And I think too that that's also kind of unique is to be able to have people who are engaged here, but maybe don't live here. Um, Oftentimes don't even work here. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know, but then they take these things and they go to their own communities and they talk about these things and they rally people and they have an example and then so it's almost like this chain
Ripple
reaction.
effect. Yeah. Yeah, and so I think that's important to recognize as well, is that through the different events, whether that's Invest and Inspire, or I Use Rural Conference, or the other trainings and presentations that happen here as part of Thrive, or Team OC, or Team Peace, and all of these things coming together, is people from outside the community are benefiting as well. They're coming, they're being invited, but then they're taking the information with them and sharing it with their own communities.
Yeah. And I think too that we're telling this great rich story and I tell it every week with somebody new. But even in Orange County we still don't a lot of people still don't even know this is happening, so it's always that constant kind of move forward, fall back, or educate here, or advance there. And there's never a perfect system or a perfect community, or we're not going to be able to just stomp out aces today. And I mean it's a growth in progress all the time.
Think about how long it took you to learn the alphabet,
No kidding.
or addition and subtraction, or multiplication, or the English language. I find myself using dictionaries all the time, and Googling, what does this mean? Because I'm constantly learning or forgetting what things, and so I think we need to think about that as well when it comes to things like trauma or adverse childhood experiences. Sometimes we need a tune up. We might have gone to one training, we might think we know something or we know it all, and the fact is learning is an ongoing process. The moment you feel like you've learned everything and it becomes an endpoint, then what is the point?
Yeah.
Um, and so I think there's been a lot of work done to provide a foundational knowledge, foundational language, so people are beginning to grasp that information. But then what? And so there's always opportunities to learn and grow. It's not just one and done, and it can't be. It can't be. So people might be tired of hearing about ACEs or trauma, but I encourage folks, think about, perhaps maybe you don't know everything, and maybe don't get discouraged either. It is an ongoing process, and take advantage of the events that are happening, or the talks or presentations, or the opportunities to engage. you might learn something new, or you might have something to share that somebody else didn't know. So,
Well, and I see that a lot. I mean, there is probably not a week that goes by that I don't have someone reaching out from another county or another, whatever, just saying, "Hey, I heard this was going on," or "How do we, can you get me in touch with this person?" Or "I want to talk with this one," or "I want to know, how'd you form that group?" Or, "How'd you get everybody to agree on whatever?" I mean, it's pretty I mean, it's amazing. And I said a lot of people, even Orange Counties, don't even know. So I think that that's also why we wanna do these types of pieces, is to have that information there.
sure, sure. And I think anytime you listen to a podcast or go to a training, it's kind of like going to church, if you will. Um, you're hearing something, you might have heard it before. Hopefully, the sermon is a little different or the preaching is a little different, but then you're sent forth.
Yeah,
Go forth.
yeah.
And so at the end of this podcast, go forth, use the information, share it, learn from it, learn from each other. And maybe you you making part of the difference. You are part of the difference. So,
Well, with that, I think you just answered my why, and I think that that's probably an excellent place to stop and think about what's next. What can we talk about next that maybe drills down into adverse childhood experiences and trauma informed care and how that relates to community. So next time. But I
all righty.
appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.